This man had awards on the wall and a title behind his name. His school had been ranked #1 for campus food 9 years in a row. 9 consecutive years. Everyone on that campus knew who he was. Parents knew his name. Students ate his food every single day. And then one Wednesday night, in a hotel room on that same campus, his wife was dead. This is the story of Emma MacDonald, 31 years old, a woman who worked at the same school as her husband, walked the same campus, and did not make it home. To understand what made this story hit the way it did, you have to understand what UMass Amherst meant to the people who worked and studied there. Campus food has a reputation, and most of the time, that reputation is not good. Mass-produced meals, uninspired options, food you eat because you have to, not because you want to. Most people who went to college cannot even tell you what the dining hall served on a Tuesday. UMass was different. For 9 consecutive years, the Princeton Review ranked UMass Amherst #1 for campus food in the entire country. Not top 10. #1. That is not luck. That is a standard that someone had to set and maintain every single day. Jeffrey MacDonald was a big part of that standard. He was 36 years old and he had built a reputation inside that kitchen that most professional chefs spend their whole careers chasing. In 2025, the American Culinary Federation named him Chef of the Year. That is not a small thing. That is a national recognition from the most respected culinary organization in the country. And it was not his only award. The school's social media pages were full of posts celebrating him, photos, ceremonies, handshakes, smiles. He was the kind of person a university puts on a pedestal, the kind of person they point to when they want to show the world what their institution stands for. And Emma, she was there too. According to payroll data made publicly available by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Emma MacDonald was a dining hall supervisor at UMass as of 2023, 31 years old, working at the same institution as her husband. It is not a stretch to think that is exactly where these two found each other in the first place. In the same building, doing work they both cared about, building a life together one shift at a time. They lived in Wilbraham, Massachusetts, about 20 minutes from campus, a regular life by every outward appearance. But hey, outward appearances are exactly that. April 22nd, 2026, a Wednesday night. That detail matters more than it might seem at first. Jeffrey and Emma MacDonald did not live on campus. They had a home in Wilbraham, 20 minutes away. There was no graduation weekend happening, no major campus event that night. No obvious reason for a couple who lived that close to be staying in a hotel on the very campus where they both worked. And yet, room 413 of Hotel UMass was where this night was headed. Hotel UMass sits at One Campus Center Way, right on the university grounds. It is not affiliated with any outside hotel chain. The school runs it entirely. It is the kind of place parents book when they drive in for graduation or alumni reserve when there is a big game. It is a nice hotel, a quiet hotel, the kind of place where nothing like this is supposed to happen. Like, why are they there on a Wednesday? That question does not have a public answer yet, and it is one of the most important questions in this entire case, because whoever booked that room, and we do not know if it was Jeffrey or Emma, made a decision that night that put them both in that building. Was this a planned evening, a spontaneous decision? Did one of them know something the other did not? Did someone walk into that room and find something they were not supposed to find? Nobody is saying. The police report does not tell us, and the only person who knows the full answer to that question is the man who is now sitting in a cell. At approximately 7:42 in the evening, a 911 call came in. Officers from the UMass Amherst Police Department and firefighters and paramedics from the Amherst Fire Department were all dispatched to that hotel. The call described an emergency in progress at that location. Given the nature of what was being reported, officers from the nearby Hadley Police Department also responded to assist. This was not a noise complaint. This was not a wellness check. Multiple departments do not roll out like that. For something minor, somebody on that call communicated something serious enough to put law enforcement from more than one jurisdiction in motion at the same time. And here is the detail that makes you stop. According to reporting, the call that went out was not described as a disturbance. It was described as a homicide, not a possible disturbance, not a domestic dispute. A homicide. Oh, so now, if that is true, somebody on that call already knew what had happened in room 413 before the police ever got there. Somebody knew, and we still do not know who made that call. When officers arrived at the hotel and made their way up to the fourth floor, what was waiting for them was not a man who was sitting quietly, hands up, ready to cooperate. Jeffrey MacDonald, award-winning chef, campus pride, chef of the year, was in that room, and he did not let them in peacefully. According to the criminal complaint filed in Eastern Hampshire District Court, a violent struggle broke out between MacDonald and the officers the moment they arrived. He threw objects at them. He struck a UMass police officer in the face, not once, but more than once. This is the same man whose photo was all over the school's social media pages, the same man holding trophies and shaking hands at award ceremonies. Make it make sense. The officers fought to get him under control, and when they finally did, when they were able to move past him and into that room, they found Emma. Emma MacDonald was on the floor of room 413. She had significant injuries that were severe enough that investigators standing in that room, looking at what was in front of them, immediately understood that what had happened to her was not an accident. It was not a fall. It was not a medical episode. According to the complaint, given the significant nature of her injuries, it was apparent to investigators that they had resulted from a violent assault. Emma MacDonald was 31 years old. She was gone. Let me tell you something about what happened in that room. The police report does not leave much to the imagination, and the confession that came after Jeffrey MacDonald was handcuffed, transported to the UMass Amherst Police Department, and read his Miranda rights, was not vague. It was not half a story. It was not something that required detectives to piece together over weeks of investigation. He told them. According to the criminal complaint, after being read his rights, MacDonald spoke with investigators and admitted that he had intentionally beaten his wife to death using his hands, his feet, and a variety of other blunt objects, and that it was his intent to kill her in doing so. Read that again slowly: his hands, his feet, objects he found in that room, and he told police that killing her was exactly what he meant to do. This was not a story about an accident. This was not a story about something that got out of hand in a moment of confusion. According to his own words, the words he gave to investigators while sitting in a police station after his rights had been read to him out loud, this was intentional. Emma MacDonald did not just lose her life in room 413. She was taken deliberately by the person who was supposed to be the one person in the world she could trust completely. The level of violence described in that complaint is the kind that is hard to sit with. When investigators talk about blunt force trauma in a case like this, when the cause of death is not a single catastrophic event, but repeated, sustained violence, it tells a story about what those final moments looked like. A beating that kills someone is not one hit. It is not two. It is blow after blow after blow until there is nothing left to fight back. Emma was 31 years old, and she endured that. Period. There are no words that make that easier to hear, but we say it clearly because Emma deserves for people to understand what happened to her. Not a sanitized version, not a softened headline. What actually happened? Now let us talk about the scene officers walked into, because that detail matters too. When law enforcement arrived at room 413, Jeffrey MacDonald did not open the door calmly. He did not sit on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. He came at them. He threw objects in the direction of the officers. He struck a UMass police officer in the face more than once. Think about that combination for a second. A woman beaten to death in the same room, a man who then turned that same aggression on the officers who came to respond. Whatever state he was in when police arrived, whether it was panic, whether something else was in his system, whether this was just who he was underneath the awards and the titles, the violence did not stop at Emma. It took multiple officers and multiple departments working together
Tonight,
to
an
get him
award-winning
under
chef at
control
UMass
and
Amherst
into
now behind
custody.
bars, accused of killing his wife in a hotel room on campus. Jeffrey MacDonald in court this morning, his lawyer entering a not guilty plea on his behalf.
UMPD is yelling about having a body down and needing additional personnel.
Just before 8 p.m. Wednesday, police responding to a 911 call about an emergency at Hotel UMass about 90 miles from Boston. According to the criminal complaint, a violent struggle erupted between MacDonald and officers, MacDonald allegedly striking one officer repeatedly in the face. Police then finding MacDonald's wife dead inside a hotel room. MacDonald's wife suffering injuries resulting from a violent assault, according to the complaint. MacDonald allegedly telling investigators he'd intentionally beaten his wife to death, using hands, feet, as well as a variety of other blunt objects.
And then, after all of that, he sat down and told them everything. Here is where this case gets complicated in a way that is easy to miss. On the surface, this looks straightforward. Two people in a hotel room. One of them is dead. The other one confessed. There is no mystery about who did it. The question of who done it was answered before the detectives even started their supplemental reports. But a confession is not the end of an investigation. It is the beginning of building a case that holds up. Defense attorneys do not need to prove their client is innocent. They need to create doubt. And the first thing any defense attorney is going to go after in a case like this is the confession itself. Specifically, whether it was given voluntarily and what state Jeffrey MacDonald was in when he gave it. We do not have toxicology results yet. We do not know what, if anything, was in his system that night, and that matters. Because if a defense attorney can argue that MacDonald was under the influence of something when he spoke to investigators, they will argue that the confession was not given with a clear mind, that it should not be admissible, that the jury should not hear it. This is exactly why investigators cannot simply close the folder and move on just because they have an admission. The physical evidence has to be processed completely and independently of anything MacDonald said. Every surface in that room, every object used, fingernail scrapings, DNA samples from both the victim and the suspect. The full forensic picture has to be built from the ground up, not because there is doubt about who did it, but because the prosecution needs a case that cannot be dismantled piece by piece in a courtroom. The hotel surveillance footage is going to be significant. Hotel UMass has cameras, the fourth floor corridor, the elevators, the lobby, all of it potentially captures a timeline of that night. Who arrived first? What time? Whether anyone else was seen near that room, whether MacDonald left and came back, whether Emma arrived alone. And then there is the 911 call. We still do not know who made it. We know the call described a homicide, not a disturbance, not a fight, a homicide, which means whoever was on that phone already understood the severity of what had happened. Did MacDonald make that call himself? Did someone else on that floor hear something and call it in? Did a hotel staff member see something that sent them to the phone? That call is a piece of evidence in its own right. The voice on it, the words used, the level of detail given, all of it will be examined. And then there is the question that nobody has answered yet, the one that has been sitting in the background of this entire story. Why were they in that hotel room on a Wednesday night? They lived 20 minutes away. There was no campus event. No obvious reason for a couple to book a room at their own workplace on a midweek evening. Investigators working backward from the confession are going to want to understand everything that led up to that room being occupied. Who made the reservation, when it was made, what the days and weeks before April the 22nd looked like for this couple. Was there a financial situation building? A relationship issue that had been growing for a while? A history of conflict that never made it into a police report? Retired law enforcement professionals who have worked domestic homicide cases will tell you the same thing consistently. It is rare for violence at this level to appear out of nowhere. There is almost always a history. Sometimes it was reported, sometimes it stayed behind closed walls, known only to friends and family who may have noticed something but never said anything out loud. The detectives on this case are going to talk to everyone, friends, co-workers, family members on both sides. They are going to build a picture of what this marriage looked like from the inside. Not the version that existed in award ceremony photos, but the real version, anyways. What we know right now is this: Jeffrey MacDonald is in custody, Emma MacDonald is gone, and the investigation is very much still in its early stages. There is more to learn here, a lot more. Jeffrey MacDonald was charged with first-degree murder and assault and battery on a police officer. He was held without bail. The following day, he appeared in Eastern Hampshire District Court for his arraignment, handcuffed behind his back, standing before a judge in the same county where he had just been celebrated as a culinary leader. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. A probable cause hearing was scheduled for May 22nd. That not guilty plea is standard procedure. It does not tell us much about where this case is headed. What tells us more is the confession sitting in the hands of prosecutors and the work being done right now to make sure that confession is airtight before this ever reaches a jury. The assault and battery charge on the police officer matters more than people might assume. If somehow the murder charge does not land the way prosecutors intend, if something in the process creates an opening for the defense, those supporting charges exist for a reason. You charge everything that is chargeable. You leave no door open for a person to walk through. The road ahead is long, but the starting point is a confession, a crime scene, hotel surveillance, and a campus full of people who are now looking at everything they thought they knew about Jeffrey MacDonald and asking themselves how much of it was real. There is no crisis communication playbook that fully prepares a university community for the moment one of their most celebrated employees is sitting in a cell charged with murdering his wife, on their campus, in their hotel, on a Wednesday night that nobody can fully explain yet. The school's chancellor, Javier Reyes, put out an official statement, and to his credit, he did not hide behind corporate language or try to minimize what had happened. He said, "I want to acknowledge that this is heartbreaking and deeply unsettling news for our campus. Our thoughts are with those affected, including the families, friends, and colleagues of the individuals involved." He also acknowledged something that a lot of institutions try to avoid saying out loud. He said, "I also recognize that the lack of complete information may add to the distress many are feeling, but this is necessary to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation." That second part matters because the community asking questions right now, students, staff, faculty, people who ate food Jeffrey MacDonald prepared, people who worked alongside Emma every single day. They deserve honesty about the fact that there is still a lot they are not being told, not because the school is hiding something, but because an active investigation requires it. And that is a hard thing to sit with when someone you knew is gone. Let me tell you something about Emma MacDonald. She was 31 years old. She was a dining hall supervisor. She showed up to that campus every day and did her job inside the same institution that is now the backdrop of the worst headline her family will ever read. We do not know everything about her life yet. The investigation is still early. The details of who she was outside of her job title and her marriage have not fully surfaced in public reporting. But she was a person, a whole person, with people who loved her and a life that extended far beyond her relationship with Jeffrey MacDonald. And she deserved to go home. Girl, the fact that the place she worked, the campus she walked every day, became the place where her life ended is something that is going to sit with that community for a very long time. The social media pages that once celebrated Jeffrey MacDonald with photos and ceremony posts are now a strange archive. The same institution that lifted him up is now the place where the worst chapter of his story was written. That is a specific kind of grief, the kind where pride and horror exist in the same space, and you do not quite know what to do with either one. Now, let us talk about what this case is asking us to think about more broadly. The first thing is about what we do not see. Experienced investigators who have worked domestic homicide cases will tell you consistently that violence at this level almost never comes from nowhere. There is rarely a first time that looks like this. Somewhere in the timeline of this marriage, there were likely signs, moments that felt off, conversations that went sideways, incidents that may or may not have ever been reported to anyone. We do not know that for certain in this case, but it is the pattern. And it is worth naming because the people in Emma's life, her friends, her family, her coworkers, may be sitting with that right now, replaying moments, wondering if there was something they saw that they did not act on, wondering if a different conversation at a different time could have changed how this ended. To those people, you are not responsible for what Jeffrey MacDonald chose to do, but your memories matter. Talk to investigators. Let them build the full picture. The second thing is about the mask that professional success can become. Jeffrey MacDonald was celebrated publicly, consistently, and by people who genuinely meant it. When you are the person a school points to as proof of their excellence, you become a version of yourself that is very easy to believe in. The awards, the recognition, the national ranking that your workplace carries partly because of your work. That kind of identity can become a wall between who you are in public and who you are when nobody is watching. We are not saying success makes someone dangerous. That is not the point. The point is that a public image, no matter how well earned, does not tell you what is happening inside someone's home or inside someone's marriage. The chef of the year and the man in room 413 wore the same face. Make it make sense. The third thing is about the unanswered questions and why they matter even when a confession exists. It is tempting to look at a case where someone has already admitted to what they did and assume the story is complete. It is not. The why is still out there. The hotel room booking, the Wednesday night, the call that went out as a homicide before officers even arrived, the possible history that nobody has spoken about publicly yet. Those questions are not just legal details, they are the difference between understanding this as an isolated event and understanding it as something that built over time, something that had warning signs that the system around them never caught or acted on. Because if there was a history and it never made it into a report, and Emma never felt safe enough or supported enough to put it on record, that is a failure that goes beyond one man and one hotel room. Anyways, the legal process is just beginning. The probable cause hearing is scheduled. The prosecution has a confession, a crime scene, and a campus full of witnesses to the life Jeffrey MacDonald presented to the world. The defense has an uphill road, but the road is long and it is not over. What is over, what ended in room 413 on that Wednesday night, is Emma MacDonald's life, 31 years old. A dining hall supervisor who walked the same campus as her husband did her job and built a life alongside someone who, according to his own words, intended to end hers. We say her name because she is not a footnote in Jeffrey MacDonald's story. She is the story, her life, her loss, and the questions that still surround what happened to her are what this case is actually about. To anyone watching who is in a situation that feels familiar, a relationship where something feels wrong, where the person you live with is not the same person the rest of the world sees, please do not wait for it to escalate to a hotel room on a Wednesday night. Talk to someone. Document what you can. Reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. There are people who will listen without judgment and help you figure out your next step. I said what I said. This has been Live Crime Deck. We keep telling these stories because the people at the center of them deserve more than a headline. Rest well, Emma.